Stephen Miller currently serves as Donald Trump's White House Deputy Chief of Staff, and he, more than anyone in Washington, is running domestic policy through the Oval Office. You might remember during the first Trump administration, Miller devised the family separation policy. It was Stephen Miller's idea to discourage migrant families escaping brutal regimes from coming to America by separating mothers from their infants. Also, according to one book, during a meeting in the White House, Stephen Miller once asked why a boat heading to the United States carrying migrants from South America couldn't be fired upon by the U.S. military. So I'm not judging Stephen Miller when I call him a Nazi. I'm not using the term as a pejorative. He just is a Nazi. Trump is a fascist. Stephen Miller is a Nazi. One of Stephen Miller's closest friends at Duke was Richard Spencer, the self-described white nationalist and anti-Semite. I can only assume these two attended Duke because they thought it was named after the KKK Grand Wizard David Duke. So Miller is responsible for ICE's quota of detaining 3,000 immigrants a day, although they're no longer able to hit that number. But Miller has instructed ICE field officers to grab anyone off the street who looks like they could be undocumented. In other words, Hispanic. When ICE field officers told Miller it's impossible to find immigrants with criminal records, Miller reportedly grew outraged and said, criminals, this is according to reporting, criminals, you're not expected to just round up criminals. He reportedly screamed at ICE field officers, ordering them to grab anyone standing around Home Depot who's availing themselves for work. Stephen Miller said, go to 7-Elevens and find people who look like they're from South America. He ordered ICE agents to go to courthouses and grab immigrants while they're doing their check-ins with immigration authorities. Again, this is Nazi stuff. What's going on right now, we have documented immigrants, law-abiding people trying to become citizens, following the rules. They were told they need to occasionally check in with ICE. They were told, stay in the system, don't live in the shadows. They do as they're told, and now when they do as they're told at the courthouse, they are arrested, detained, and punished, all because they followed the rules. They are now being kept in for-profit detention centers for as long as possible. They want to keep these migrants in detention centers for as long as possible in order to rack up fees paid to Geo Group and CoreCivic. And when they are sent back to either their country of origin or a third country like El Salvador or Sudan, they can't see their families, and it's impossible for them to find an attorney in that country who speaks English. This is what's going on in America, thanks to Stephen Miller, the chief architect of this entire policy. Here is the amazing thing about this rotten, diseased half homunculus. He's not even a full homunculus. Stephen Miller is married to an equally diseased and rotten half homunculus whose reproductive system apparently seems to work since she, from what I hear, squatted out 3 kids. There's the couple. By the way, this is the best Stephen Miller and Katie Miller are ever going to look. This is their best day. This is their best photograph. I don't advocate forced sterilization. However, the United States Supreme Court in the early 20th century ruled in favor of it. We used to do forced sterilization here in America. We did it before the Nazis. We were doing forced sterilizations to wipe out degenerates. It was perfectly legal after Supreme Court Justice Oliver Wendell Holmes, in his majority opinion, famously stated, quote, 3 generations of imbeciles are enough. Well, we don't do forced sterilizations anymore, and I kind of understand why. But if we ever bring back forced sterilizations, something Stephen Miller and his wife no doubt support, I think we should start with Stephen Miller and that meeskite of a wife, Katie Miller. They already have 3 small children, and to paraphrase Oliver Wendell Holmes, 1 generation of Millers is enough. This is Mrs. Stephen Miller, and again, this is her working at the White House. It's the best she's ever going to look. This is a meeskite, as ugly on the outside as she is on the inside. Katie Miller is a meeskite. There's nothing a plastic surgeon can do for a meeskite because the ugliness oozes from within. When I discovered Stephen Miller found a spouse, I immediately asked, what kind of woman would have sex with Stephen Miller? But then I learned about the equally revolting Katie Miller and found myself asking, what kind of man would want to have sex with this sulfuric harpy with a catcher's mitt for a face? By the way, you should never make fun of the way a woman looks. Never make fun of the way a woman looks. Unless she's Katie Miller, who purports to be a woman and has the face that looks like a desiccated skin tag on a genital wart. Meeskite. This is a meeskite. It's okay for me to say this. I got permission from my sister, who said my mother would be proud of me for calling Katie Miller what she is, a meeskite. There's nothing a plastic surgeon can do for this meeskite because it oozes from within. Well, Stephen and Katie Miller, there they are. They look like Siamese prostate glands, don't they? They are Washington's new power couple. I'm sorry, white power couple, and they're made for each other. They met while both working inside the first Trump White House. This year, Katie was employed at the White House until Elon Musk discovered her and then took her. She left the Trump administration to go work for Elon Musk, a much wealthier white supremacist, Elon Musk, who donates millions to neo-Nazi parties in Germany and throughout Europe. Well, Katie Miller's work for Elon Musk caused a little family friction after the White House had a falling out with Elon. So Katie left Elon Musk and is now hosting a new podcast because she said there's a need for a platform that speaks to women just like her. Yeah, it's been tough finding a platform that speaks to women just like Katie Miller ever since Julia Streicher was forced to shut down Der Stürmer. There hasn't been a platform for women like Katie Miller since Julia Streicher was forced to shut down Der Stürmer. I think it was 1945 that they stopped printing Der Stürmer. By the way, you know how Katie Miller stays married to Stephen Miller? It's called anosmia. That's a medical condition, anosmia, where patients have zero sense of smell. Let me tell you how stomach-churningly disgusting this abomination Katie Miller is. Katie Miller was interviewed by Jacob Soboroff for his book about immigration entitled Separated. Katie Miller was asked if, now that she has 3 small children, whether her husband's family separation policy might kind of seem cruel to her now that she's had 3 kids. Here is what Katie Miller said, this meeskite, whose face is a dead ringer for Rocky Marciano right after going 13 rounds with Jersey Joe Walcott. She looks like Rocky Marciano after going 13 rounds with Jersey Joe Walcott. These are her exact words, quote, being asked, Now that you have 3 small kids, do you feel bad about your husband's family separation policy? And she said, quote, "My family and colleagues told me that when I have kids, I'll think about family separation differently, but I don't think so." Mrs. Schreck added, quote, "The Department of Homeland Security sent me to the border to see the separations for myself, to try to make me more compassionate, but it didn't work." So this woman, she calls herself a woman, Katie Miller, to me, she's Samara Morgan from The Ring, right? Dead ringer. She looks like Samara Morgan from The Ring, doesn't she? I can't tell I'm being mean to Samara Morgan, but I can't tell the difference. She's doing her own podcast. This is the actual trailer for Katie Miller's podcasts, which premiered yesterday.
Hi, I'm Katie Miller. Welcome to my podcast and welcome to my living room. You may be wondering what I'm doing here hosting a podcast. It seems these days just about everyone has a podcast. For years, I've watched from the sidelines as people I know, people I respect, have hosted TV shows, radio shows, podcasts, you name it. And I thought, hey, I could do that too. And why? Because for years I've seen that there isn't a place for conservative women to gather online. There isn't a place for a mom like me, mom of 3 young kids, 4, 3, and almost 2, and a wife, and trying to do a career, eat healthy, work out. There isn't a place for a mom like me. And so I wanted to create that space where we have real, honest conversations with people across the political spectrum and across the world to get lifestyle information, news, laugh with our friends, gossip about what's going on in the world from our perspective, from that of a mom with 3 kids who's trying to make every day be the best it can, from bedtime to bath time to breakfast in the morning to getting out the door for work and everything in between. A little bit about me. I've been a communications director to senators, to a vice president. I worked in high levels of the U.S. government. And most recently, I'm concluding my time working full-time for Elon Musk. And so please join me for my podcast. We're going to do this once a week on Mondays to talk about lifestyle, what's going on, real honest conversations, none of the bullshit, with people from across the spectrum, whether that be politicians, business leaders, celebrities, musicians, artists, scientists, you name it, we're going to have it. Because this is life about women, for women, with men too, talking about what matters to women. And that isn't just what everyone considers a woman's issue, because what's a woman's issue, I have yet to find out. So join me every Monday for the Katie Miller podcast. Welcome.
As all 4 of my grandparents would say of her, what a meeskite. That's a meeskite. I think we altered her voice. I think that might, to make her just a little more attractive, we altered her voice. So that is Katie Miller, and I'm going to put a picture. There we go. That's a picture of 5 migrants being turned away at the border thanks to Katie Miller's husband. Take a look if you're watching Katie Miller. These are 2 women and 3 children. Katie Miller is hosting a podcast for conservative moms who are trying to eat right, exercise, raise 3 small children, keep a marriage going, and have a career. And I look at these 5 human beings suffering at the hands of Katie Miller's husband, and I have to say, you, Katie Miller, you are not a woman. No mother, no woman would think and behave the way you do. You're not a woman. You're not a mother because you're not a human being. And one day, Katie Miller and Stephen Miller, your 3 children will grow up, and their only way for salvation will be to no longer speak with you. I've been around a long time. I know things. I've raised kids. I've watched other kids grow. I see how children turn out, especially when they have parents like Stephen and Katie Miller. Here's what I know. I promise you, to the core of my very being, the only way Katie Miller's 3 children are ever going to survive their childhood is by refusing to have Katie Miller in their lives when they become adults, as well as Stephen Miller. I can assure you, otherwise they're doomed. That's the truth. That is a fact. Sometimes I'm sarcastic, sometimes I play around, but the only way Stephen Miller and Katie Miller's 3 children can have meaningful, healthy adult lives is when they reach the age of emancipation, they reject their parents. I'm rooting for her children. I am. I wish them well. But the only way Katie and Stephen Miller's children have any chance of surviving these 2 monsters for parents is when they come of age, they have to say, I don't have a mother, I don't have a father, I'm an orphan. This is Kellyanne Conway, for example. This is a picture of her during the first Trump administration, peeing on a couch in the Oval Office as Trump talks to a group of black men. I don't know if it looks like she's peeing on the couch. I didn't alter the photo. This is a disgusting, reprehensible, homunculus Kellyanne Conway. Everybody knows she's a disgusting, repulsive person, including her husband, George, who got out of that marriage as the first Trump administration was wrapping up, and Kellyanne's oldest daughter kept calling 911 on her mother several times. The daughter tried for early emancipation, to her credit, and she then became a Playboy bunny, and I think has an OnlyFans account. It's been a tough road for Kellyanne Conway's eldest daughter, but she's a good kid, and I mean that, because she rejected everything her mother, Kellyanne Conway, represents. I think this kid is going to turn out okay. She's lucky. She's got her father, George Conway, who I believe gave her the wisdom to reject and torture her mother. You got to know when your parents are horrible, otherwise their sins are visited upon you. This is as old as the Greeks. So Katie and Stephen Miller, you are the last people on earth who should be trusted with children. Anyway, I listened to Katie Miller's podcast for conservative women, premiered this week, and she has some helpful tips for busy moms balancing a husband, a job, and 3 small kids. She says it's important to have a date night. Once a week, Stephen and Katie Miller get dressed up, hire a babysitter, and visit a local ICE detention center to watch children with stage 4 cancer get separated from their relatives and shipped off to El Salvador or Honduras without their cancer medication. This is their date night. What Katie Miller said she finds so heartwarming is that these kids with stage 4 cancer are U.S. citizens because they were born here in America, but their mothers were not. And the kids with stage 4 cancer are given a choice by ICE. You can stay in the country with some relatives, or we ship you off to Honduras without your cancer medicine because that's where we're sending your mother because she's not a citizen. And the kids with stage 4 cancer always choose to leave America without their medicine, even though they're U.S. citizens, because there is nothing more powerful than the bond between a mother and her child with stage 4 cancer. These kids, it's beautiful. These kids with stage 4 cancer want to be with their mothers. And Katie says she's so moved by these displays of family devotion, it makes her want to share with listeners a recipe for cookies. Her mother used to bake for the entire family and then refused to let Katie eat any because her mother said, "Katie, you're too fat." I feel better. That's how I cope. Thanks to the passage of Trump's One Big Beautiful Bill, the budget for ICE is now approaching more than all other federal law enforcement agencies combined. I told you for 5 years we had to abolish ICE. I warned you. ICE is now recruiting 18-year-olds. Kristi Noem, the head of Homeland Security, this genius who had her Louis Vuitton purse stolen right from underneath her, $4,000 in the purse, head of Homeland Security, gets stolen right from underneath her, surrounded by federal security guards. Anyway, she now needs to hire 10,000 new ICE agents. America doesn't need her to, but because of one big beautiful bill, she has to hire 10,000 new ICE agents. So Noem, who has a new stylist, is offering signing bonuses. That's her new makeup. That is an actual photograph of Kristi Noem's new makeup. Kristi Noem is offering signing bonuses of up to $50,000 and forgiveness of college debt. I think if you're an ICE agent, you're more likely going to need forgiveness for having a college degree than having college debt. I don't think they appreciate readers over at ICE. Anyway, Noem has lowered the age of employment to be an ICE agent down to 18. That's right, kids. You can now work for ICE fresh out of juvenile detention. 18-year-olds, because that's exactly who you want trying to grasp the subtleties of due process while executing search warrants based on probable cause. That's who you want. You want pimply-faced teenagers with raging hormones who think life is all a video game. Look, I have nothing against 18-year-olds. I raised quite a few. But they think they're a lot smarter than they actually are. The last thing you want to give an 18-year-old is power over another individual. They barely know what to do with the power they have over themselves. 2 words: abolish ICE. I've been saying it for 5 years. Abolish ICE. Reuters says an Alabama social worker who assists immigrants has been detained by ICE. 24-year-old Giovanna Hernandez was pulled over by cops near Birmingham, Alabama during a routine traffic stop and then arrested and turned over to ICE, who is now keeping her in a local detention facility. Hernandez came to America from Mexico with her parents when she was 7. She didn't qualify for a work permit under the Obama-era Deferred Action Child Arrival Program because Trump, in his first term, stopped issuing them. She's a high school valedictorian who went on to get a master's degree in social work and, up until her arrest, was working with teenagers, helping them to stay in school. Now she's stuck in an ICE detention facility. The Seattle Times reporting that a Washington state government worker is now being held, along with their 6-year-old son, Isaac, by ICE agents in a Texas detention facility after she was arrested at the Canadian border. Her name is Sarah Shaw. She's a New Zealand national with all her papers in order. She works for the government of Washington state, helping at-risk children inside a juvenile rehabilitation center. Shaw is a survivor of domestic abuse, and she had visited Canada to drop her 2 older daughters off and was returning to the United States when ICE agents decided there were problems with her work visa. And instead of calling Washington state, where she works, or checking with her union, ICE agents decided it would be more prudent to ship Ms. Shaw and her 6-year-old son, Isaac, to South Texas Family Residential Center, where, according to Shaw's lawyers, she's blown through her entire savings account buying toothpaste, toothbrushes, soap, shampoo, and other assorted items for herself and her 6-year-old son. As of today, the 2 are still being held inside the South Texas Family Residential Center, which is owned and operated by CoreCivic, the largest for-profit detention corporation in America, currently operating 16 facilities for ICE. CoreCivic donated $500,000 to Donald Trump's inaugural committee. Last year, the CoreCivic Political Action Committee donated close to $1 million to Donald Trump and other Republican candidates. The CEO of CoreCivic is Damon Hinninger, who, according to Truth Out, donated $300,000 last year to Trump and the Republican Party. By the way, CoreCivic's main competitor in the for-profit detention business is GEO Group, which, according to The Intercept, paid Pam Bondi nearly $400,000 to work as a lobbyist for them before getting appointed our nation's Attorney General. Border czar Tom Homan did some consulting work for GEO Group after he left ICE and before Trump appointed him border czar. The Washington Post reporting that a woman seeking treatment for her arthritis at the world-renowned National Institutes of Health Clinical Center in Bethesda, Maryland, was arrested. This patient was seeking care, was arrested by ICE, and is now being detained. A security check when she entered the hospital revealed her identification card didn't quite meet federal standards. That's what they're doing now. They're checking you for ID in emergency rooms. She had something like a state-issued driver's license that didn't comply with the federal government's Real ID Act of 2005. And so not only is her arthritis not being treated, she also had a skin condition. She's being held in a detention center. There are now reports that more and more immigrants in this country, legally, with documentation, doing their necessary check-ins with ICE, are terrified of going to an emergency room for fear they will be arrested. And that's a good thing, because the one thing we as Americans, what we all want and need is our food being handled, our children and grandparents cared for, our homes built by people who are neglecting their own health care because they don't want to get put into a concentration camp. We all know this makes for a safer and healthier country. As I said earlier, back in 2012, President Obama, I didn't say this back in 2012. As I said earlier, back in 2012, President Obama set up a program called Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals. You know it as DACA, which granted a pathway for citizenship to 580,000 people brought into this country when they were children. They didn't ask to come here. They were brought here by their parents. Trump became president, discontinued the program. The 580,000 DACA recipients under Obama didn't lose their status. But Trump refused to add any more to the list. Then when Biden became president and tried to jumpstart the DACA program, adding more DACA recipients, it got tied up in the courts. The point is, we now have DACA recipients, about 580,000. They cannot be deported. They're here illegally. But that didn't stop ICE agents in El Paso, Texas, from arresting and detaining 28-year-old Catalina Santiago at El Paso International Airport as she attempted to board a domestic flight to attend an immigrant rights conference. She's a community activist. She's being held inside the El Paso Processing Center despite presenting her DACA papers to immigration authorities. ICE is now defending her detention. They say she was arrested previously for trespassing as a community organizer. Well, that's what community organizers who protest get arrested for, trespassing and possession of marijuana. Somebody get me some pearls to clutch. Possession of marijuana. Have you walked around Texas? You're more likely to get arrested for not possessing marijuana. Who gets arrested for marijuana possession? DACA recipients who work as community organizers in Texas. That's who. CBS News now reporting a volunteer firefighter in New York's Westchester County was arrested by ICE and shipped off to a correctional center in Michigan. Wow, that's really efficient. Arrest someone in the suburbs of New York City and ship him all the way to Michigan. Really smart. 43-year-old Milton Guamariga, father of 3, came to the United States from Ecuador when he was a child. For the past 20 years, he has been in the system working as a volunteer fireman for the past 7 years, and he applied for citizenship 2 years ago. So he's not in this country illegally, not a criminal, and he has documentation. Doesn't matter. He is the low-hanging fruit the feckless cowards from ICE grab to hit their quotas. Doesn't matter that he did nothing wrong. Doesn't matter that he's in the country legally. His daughter telling reporters that ICE keeps moving him from one detention center to another in Michigan, and it's impossible to talk to him on the phone, and it's impossible for his lawyers to talk with him. The San Francisco Chronicle reports that ICE, which should have been abolished, ICE is currently detaining 57,000 people right now. When Trump returned to office back in January, ICE was holding fewer than 40,000. So now there are 57,000 in these ICE detention centers. There used to be 40,000. The current funding levels only provide ICE with money for 41,000 beds. And those 41,000 beds are spread out across 146 detention facilities around the country. Of those 146 ICE detention facilities, about 130 are for-profit prisons run primarily by CoreCivic or GeoWest, and there are some smaller mom-and-pop concentration camp providers like LaSalle Corrections and Management and Training Corporation. Well, let's do some math here. You got 57,000 human beings right now held in mostly for-profit prisons that only have 41,000 beds. What do you think an American corporation is going to do when they're filled to capacity? You think they're going to bite into their bottom line and make conditions livable? No, the answer is no. Everyone who is released from one of these detention centers, they all, to a person, describe it as the single worst experience of their lives. Rats, bed bugs if they're lucky enough to get a bed. 1 meal a day, and calling it a meal is being generous. No medicine, like if you're diabetic, you go into shock, no insulin. The for-profit prison industry collects anywhere between $125 to $200 a day per inmate. Good corporate governance would dictate that CoreCivic or GeoWest would tell ICE, we have no room. We can't take any more. But that would mean giving up as much as $200 a day per inmate. So they take them. They take them in. They barely give them 1 meal a day, tell them to sleep on the floor in the cold with no heat or no air conditioning, no soap, no toothpaste, no shower, sharing clogged open-air toilets. Sometimes there's toothpaste, but you have to buy it because it's a for-profit detention facility. This is America. The New York Times reports the ACLU is suing ICE on behalf of a Peruvian man as well as 100 other inmates for being held inside crowded and unsanitary cells here in New York City's Varick Street Processing Center, operated by the federal government. It's not for profit. According to the lawsuit, inmates are forced to sleep either sitting upright in a chair or on a concrete floor surrounded by overflowing toilets, emitting, quote, a horrific stench as the inmates are denied access to hot water and showers. The Eighth Amendment forbids cruel and unusual punishment. Is this a violation of the Eighth Amendment? What do you think? Leave a comment. The San Francisco Chronicle reports a 47-year-old Peruvian immigrant detained by ICE for 4 days described conditions inside the San Francisco ICE detention center as quote-unquote hell, where he was forced to share a cell with 6 other inmates and no beds. His name is Jorge Willie Valera, and he was arrested by ICE agents. His full name is Jorge Willie Valera Chucalanque, but they call him Jorge Valera. He was arrested by ICE agents after he went before a judge to deal with his immigration status, right? So he's obeying the law. If you're in this country and you have documents and you're in the system, you go before a judge. But the cowards at ICE, this is where they hang out now, to put numbers on the board. After 4 days in the San Francisco cell, he was grabbed right after he talked to the judge. He was grabbed. He spent 4 days in a San Francisco ICE detention cell. Then he was shipped off to Fresno and then on to Arizona. There's no reporting yet as to whether he has finally been released. Valera telling the San Francisco Chronicle, quote, "I've never experienced something like this, not even in my own country." On August 6, a 32-year-old Chinese citizen held by ICE inside a detention facility at the Moshannon Valley Processing Center in Pennsylvania hanged himself in the shower room. Chaofeng Ji was detained for just 5 days, awaiting a court hearing. And he hanged himself. He left behind a suicide note. Police say they don't believe anyone else was responsible. Well, Stephen Miller is responsible. This now makes the 8th immigrant dying this year in ICE custody. Lawyers filed a wrongful death lawsuit last week on behalf of the family of a Haitian woman who died back in April while being detained by ICE inside a Florida for-profit detention center owned by Geo Group. The lawsuit alleges the woman died after her incessant complaining of chest pains went ignored. Marie-Ange Blaise, 44, died before guards granted her request to see a physician because this is a for-profit detention facility and a physician costs money. Human Rights Watch reporting for nearly 10 minutes, guards refused to come to her help while she screamed in agony at the top of her lungs. Then it took another 20 minutes for an ambulance to arrive, by which time she was already dead. ICE claiming the 44-year-old woman died from natural causes. Florida Congresswoman Frederica Wilson toured the facility a week after the woman's death and later reported there's only one doctor on call to attend to the medical needs of 500 inmates. Florida, that's Florida. It's also home to the now infamous Alligator Alcatraz, a 3,000-bed state facility recently completed inside the Everglades. That's why it's called Alligator Alcatraz. Plans for expansion have now been halted for 14 days after a judge ordered an environmental impact statement to determine what kind of damage the prison will be doing to the nature preserve surrounding it. Florida television station NBC6 reporting immigration attorneys are now complaining that placing Alligator Alcatraz in such a remote area makes it impossible for inmates to meet with their lawyers as well as their families. Hatzel Vela is a reporter for NBC6. She says attorneys for inmates there say their clients have zero criminal records but are being treated like, quote unquote, prisoners of war. 2 lawyers complained they are only able to see their clients for about 90 minutes and are unable to have privileged conversations because guards brandishing automatic weapons are standing near them. The lawyers also complain surveillance cameras positioned everywhere suggest their private conversations are being recorded. NBC6 also out with an exclusive interview with a female Alligator Alcatraz worker who quit after being there just a week. She describes conditions for the guards, not the inmates, for the guards as inhumane. For the guards. The woman says she was paid $26 an hour, but immediately contracted COVID and left. The woman said employees were forced to share overcrowded trailers to sleep in. Those trailers had no hot water, and the toilets were overflowing. That's for the guards. That's for the guards. Kristi Noem, the head of Homeland Security, has repeatedly called Alligator Alcatraz a model prison that sets the standard for future state-run detention facilities. Not so, says Democratic Congresswoman Debbie Wasserman Schultz, who toured Alligator Alcatraz last month, along with several other members of the House of Representatives. After they toured Alligator Alcatraz, they called it an inhumane internment camp. This, after new reporting that Alligator Alcatraz, situated in the middle of the Everglades, was built on the cheap, is already flooding, with some saying inmates will have to be evacuated repeatedly now that it's hurricane season, since this facility can't withstand a major storm. Border czar Tom Homan calling criticism of Alligator Alcatraz, quote unquote, politically motivated. House Democrats touring the detention center, Alligator Alcatraz, complain detainees are being packed in, 32 per cage, with one member of Congress describing the space as, quote, wall-to-wall human being. Congresswoman Debbie Wasserman Schultz complained of bugs everywhere. Bugs in the Everglades, who would have guessed? She complained, and I'm going to go large here because you got to look at this. This is before the inmates came in. She complained, and you can see this in the picture, each cage has 3 tiny open air toilets, no privacy, no dignity. Look at that. Toilets built with, can you see that? These are toilets built with sinks. And when I was locked up for a night, this is what we had. It was a toilet built with sinks, so inmates can wash their hands above the toilet, and they also have to use that same sink to brush their teeth, and if they want to get a sip from the water fountain, guess where the water fountain is? Above the toilet, filled with effluvia. Think about this. None of these people are murderers. They're not child rapists. They're not gang members. They don't lead cartels. These are just human beings who did nothing wrong. They've got 32, sometimes 36 of them sharing 3 open air toilets that are reportedly clogged all the time, rarely cleaned. If they want to brush their teeth or get a fresh cup of water, they must walk over to the filthy toilet where the sink is. This is out of Midnight Express. This is out of Papillon, with members of the congressional delegation complaining of unbearable heat and humidity. One woman telling reporters her husband is being held inside Alligator Alcatraz and has only been able to take 1 shower in 6 days. Florida Governor Ron DeSantis, he's very proud of Alligator Alcatraz. He set it all up. And the state of Florida is paying outside contractors, Republican donors, getting millions a year to provide essential services to Alligator Alcatraz. And, once you privatize prisons, They go out of their way to make sure the inmates have clean toilets and plenty of food. The state of Florida built Alligator Alcatraz at a cost of $450 million, and now Florida is asking FEMA to reimburse the state for the cost of the prison. See, FEMA, we've been over this. FEMA has two spending buckets. One is for disaster relief. The other bucket is for providing humanitarian aid to migrants. Do you think Alligator Alcatraz is providing $450 million worth of humanitarian aid to migrants? Last month, Ron DeSantis gave Trump and our Director of Homeland Security, Kristi Noem, a tour of Alligator Alcatraz right before they brought in the detainees. Here is... hang on. I went too fast. Where am I? Hang on. Don't panic. Don't panic. Here is Donald Trump admiring Alligator Alcatraz, and because he knows it's about to be a scene of brutality and human degradation, he got everybody laughing.
Hey, Biden wanted me in here, okay? He wanted me. It didn't work out that way, but he wanted me in here.
So funny. It's so funny. Everybody is laughing because everybody has such a great sense of humor. Ron DeSantis, especially during the war in Iraq and Afghanistan, Ron DeSantis served as a JAG officer down in Gitmo who reportedly liked to observe the occasional torture of the inmates. Not making this up. Mansour Addafi, who was held at Gitmo for 14 years, never charged, later said he remembers DeSantis laughing hysterically as Mansour Addafi was held down, strapped to this chair, as a tube was rammed into his nose, and he was force-fed, causing him to choke and vomit blood. It is force-feeding inmates is torture. When asked about the horrible conditions inside Alligator Alcatraz, when asked about the filthy, clogged toilets, bugs, the flooding, people going hungry, no insulin for diabetics, inmates unable to meet privately with their attorneys and families, Governor Ron DeSantis said, hey, it's not a resort. Really? Because it sounds exactly like a Florida resort I know about, Mar-a-Lago. Here's Jeff Bezos and Donald Trump enjoying a nice meal at Mar-a-Lago earlier this year. This is not doctored. This is an actual dish. This is not artificial. Okay, it's artificial. I got to be honest. It's artificial intelligence, but it could happen. It could be true. As I said, let's just go, Lara. Let's just, oh, what a douchebag. She's such a douchebag. As I said earlier, Kristi Noem, the puppy killer, our head of Homeland Security, she calls Alligator Alcatraz a model for all future state-run immigration facilities. I'm going to play you a clip. Here she is claiming Alligator Alcatraz only houses the worst of the worst. See, the problem is she's a liar. The problem is none of these people are murderers, rapists, or child molesters. They can't be. None of the people who we sent to El Salvador, to that prison, were murderers, rapists, or child molesters. They can't be, because if they were, they would be locked up in either a state or federal prison. We have a president and a head of Homeland Security claiming ICE is rounding up the worst of the worst, detaining murderers, rapists, child molesters, leaders of drug cartels. They want us to believe that Alligator Alcatraz is home to murderers, rapists, and child molesters. No, that's the White House. Based on reporting from PolitiFact, as well as the Miami Herald and the Tampa Bay Times, we know for a fact that at least half of the people being held in Alligator Alcatraz right now have zero criminal convictions, zero criminal records. They are wanted for nothing. They were just taken off the street by ICE. These are people with documentation in the system, and Trump just decided, I'm the president, and I can throw them out of the country if I decide. The other half are either awaiting trial on some sort of non-violent offense, or more likely had been arrested like all of us previously. All of us have been arrested at least once. These are not convicts. How stupid do Donald Trump and Kristi Noem think the American people are to believe that a convicted murderer, a rapist, a child molester, a gang leader, a cartel drug dealer would ever be put in a cage with 32 other inmates? The record keeping on this stuff at the ICE detention facilities and in state prisons is marginal at best. But this is why when we lose critical thinking, we believe anything. Think for a second. There are some reports that in the state of Texas, 117 undocumented immigrants are now serving time for homicide. Okay? So I'm going to say that there were 117 undocumented immigrants in Texas who, I'll give them the benefit of the guilt and say they were found guilty in a court of law of committing murder, and they weren't deported back to their home country. They weren't placed in an ICE detention facility. They were locked up in a state penitentiary because that's where you put murderers, rapists, gang leaders, leaders of drug cartels. You don't put rapists, murderers, child molesters in ICE detention facilities, okay? That's how it works in this country, you effing morons. If you're undocumented in America and you commit murder, if you rape, if you molest, if you are a big-time drug dealer, you aren't turned over to ICE with the possibility of being sent back to your country of origin or detained in a for-profit detention facility. You are locked up in a state or federal prison. In what universe is ICE ever going to be rounding up murderers, drug dealers, rapists, and then deporting them? None. Use your head. Use your head. None of these people are rapists, murderers. None of the people who were sent to that dungeon in El Salvador were murderers, were rapists. Think for a second. If they were murderers, you effing morons, if they were child molesters or rapists or leading a drug cartel, they wouldn't be deported, you effing morons. They'd be sent to a state prison. They'd be handed over either to the DEA, the FBI, local police, the district attorney for prosecution. They would never be deported. The United States government would never say, well, we found this murderer, this rapist and child molester, we're sending him back to El Salvador. This is what happens when a country loses all capacity for critical thinking. Here is Kristi Noem dehumanizing the people being the innocent. These are innocent people being held in Alligator Alcatraz. They're as innocent as you and I are. Okay? We've all done something wrong. We've all trespassed. We've all done something. All of us can be arrested. Think about that. All of us can be arrested. all of us can be detained. The old saying, prosecutors say you can indict a ham sandwich, right? Here is this D-bag, Kristi Noem, dehumanizing the innocent people, innocent compared to Donald Trump. These are innocent people. Here she is after the tour of Alligator Alcatraz. Here she is dehumanizing the people being arrested.
We are going after murderers and rapists and traffickers and drug dealers and getting them off the streets and getting them out of this country because Joe Biden let the worst of the worst come in here.
All right. Once again, this isn't about keeping us safe. This is about scapegoating, satisfying the bloodlust. This is about sadism. These are about really sick people who want to hurt others and making sure your tax dollars are spent enriching the for-profit detention industry, which is not keeping us safe. Not a single ICE detention facility makes you safer because not a single murderer, rapist, child molester is being detained in an ICE detention facility. Yeah, I'm going to be a broken record on this. You don't put murderers, rapists, child molesters, leaders of drug cartels in for-profit ICE detention facilities. It's not how it works. Here again, here she is. Let's listen to this moron, the puppy killer, Kristi Noem.
These are the kind of deranged individuals that are on our streets in America that we're trying to target and get out of our country because they are so deranged they don't belong here. And they shouldn't be walking the streets with our children. And they shouldn't be living in the communities with our families who just want to grow up, go to job, raise their children to grow up and get a job and to live the American dream. So thank you to all of our law enforcement officers, those in our military that have been helping, our National Guard. Thank you to Governor DeSantis for stepping up and being an example to other governors. I hope my phone rings off the hook from governors calling and saying, how can we do what Florida did?
This is Nazi shit. This is when you dehumanize people, you can do anything to them. My father taught me that. My father fought in World War II. He said what they brainwashed my father into believing things about the Japanese and the Germans that were unbelievable. In order to kill people, you have to dehumanize them first. This is what they're doing. This is what these people are doing. Here is the very stupid and stoned Joe Rogan pretending to be disappointed with his friend Donald Trump, pretending, gaslighting his listeners, expressing buyer's remorse for the way ICE is treating thousands of innocent people. Joe Rogan is just shocked that Donald Trump is treating immigrants this way.
What's happening now is, it's kind of disappointing.
It's insane.
Yeah.
We were told there would be there's two things that are insane. One is the targeting of migrant workers, not cartel members, not gang members, not drug dealers, just construction workers showing up in construction sites and raiding them, gardeners.
Yeah.
Like, really?
He's really good at pretending to be stupid, because he is. But he pretends to be a lot dumber than he actually is. Did you really think, Joe Rogan, that ICE was going to do battle with gang members, murderers, and rapists? And then once ICE got their hands on murderers, drug dealers, child molesters, and rapists, they were going to deport them? Is that how you're not that stupid, Joe Rogan. You think ICE is ever going to track down rapists, murderers, and deport them? Are you you're not that stupid, Joe Rogan. ICE does immigration enforcement. That's it. They find people who are in this country, but their visa expired. Their work papers aren't up to date. That's the job of ICE, and that's all they're trained to do. ICE is not trained to go find gang members. That's why I'm going to watch my language. That's why the National Guard had to be brought in to help ICE in Los Angeles. They don't go after murderers and rapists. They don't. You never hear of ICE agents being injured on the job. You never hear of anybody fighting back with an ICE agent because immigration enforcement isn't as dangerous as working for the FBI, the DEA, the ATF, or being a local police officer. Can I see your papers? Oh, your work permit expired. Come with us. They're not ever going to take a rapist, murderer, or a drug dealer. The for-profit detention facilities are not equipped to house gang members, murderers, and rapists. And if the cowards, and I do mean cowards, if you work for ICE, you're a coward, you're a worthless human being. If one of these cowards at ICE inadvertently stumbles upon a murderer, rapist, or cartel member after that ICE agent shits his pants or her pants, they're not putting the murderer on a plane to that murderer's country of origin. That murderer is going to be tried here in the United States. That's how it works, Joe. Again, this is why you never hear of a shootout between ICE agents and gang members or the leader of a drug cartel or a murderer. Now, there are, unfortunately, been some people taking pot shots at ICE agents, and that's, and I'm being serious here, unacceptable. Unacceptable. I do not condone violence in any manifestation. So I don't approve of ICE, but I do not approve of anybody hurting ICE agents even more. These ICE agents are not equipped, they're not trained to deal with real criminals. There is not a single murderer, rapist, or cartel leader being held in an ICE detention facility. I know, if you read if you go to the ICE website, they'll tell you about all these people, all these bad people they've rounded up. If they're that bad, they would be handed over to the DEA, the FBI, state and local prosecutors. It's all bullshit. And yet, thanks to one big, beautiful bill, ICE now has a budget that is about what we spend on all other federal law enforcement agencies combined. We're paying 18-year-olds to play dress up. Kristi Noem was telling 18-year-olds, come play dress up. Our government does a lot of stupid things. And with Trump in charge, is going to do a lot of stupid things. 18-year-old kids playing dress up are not going to be tracking down murderers, leaders of drug cartels, and rapists. They're not, at least for the time being. They're going to do what all authoritarian regimes do with 18-year-olds being allowed to play cops and robbers, and that's arrest you and me, because we're not going to put up a fight. So ICE now has a budget of all the other federal law enforcement agencies combined. They got to hire 10,000 more agents. To do what? To do what? I told you we had to abolish ICE, but money's pouring in. People need work. It's why failed wash-up actor Dean Cain, remember Superman, Dean Cain? He's going to work for ICE Remember Dean Cain? He played Superman, then couldn't find any work, and he became a conservative in order to blame his conservative beliefs on Hollywood not wanting to hire him. You know, you could take acting lessons, Dean Cain, and then maybe somebody would hire you, but the cop-out is, oh, I'm a conservative. Nobody would hire me. It's not that I have zero talent. It's I spew MAGA crap. Here is Dean Cain recording a public service message for ICE now that he's working for Kristi Noem.
Hi there, white people. This is washed-up failed actor Dean Cain. Most of you know me as the guy who played Superman for 2 years and then couldn't find work afterwards because I can't act and nobody would hire me. Because I'm incapable of admitting to myself I have zero talent, I took the coward's way out and became a loud-mouthed Republican espousing intolerant MAGA talking points every chance I got. That way, I could say nobody in Hollywood will hire me because of my politics instead of the real reason nobody will hire me. And that's because I'm a flatulent loser. Anyway, I'm working for ICE, which is my first steady paycheck in 3 decades. Kristi Noem, the head of Homeland Security, asked me to record this public service message to warn people in this country illegally, as well as Hispanic people who are U.S. citizens. But look too Hispanic, that if you don't self-deport, we will track you down and eat you. Get out of my country. Man, I could use a baker's dozen of Cinnabons right now. My metabolism hates my conservative politics, so it's made me look this way. But I don't care what my metabolism thinks. I'm not going to shut my mouth when it comes to my politics, or my sour cream and onion-flavored Pringles. Now, if you'll excuse me, I need to find the nearest Portasan, because it turns out my kryptonite is those chili cheese dogs at 7-Eleven, and I'm about to soil my red cape.
So I'm going to say that's artificial intelligence. Technically, there's a little artificial intelligence. Some of that, it's a combination of artificial intelligence, Photoshop, and other assorted programs that I should not be playing with. I'm going to wrap it up. I just want to show you a couple more things that here is, I found Donald Trump's great-great-grandfather. This is actual video of his great-great-grandfather, Adolf Hitler Trump. This is an old... This is from 1901. That's Adolf Hitler Trump. He was a well-respected businessman in Berlin. It's, the pigeons love Adolf Hitler Trump. It would be Donald Trump's great-great-grandfather. I know. Adolf Hitler Trump. Here is Vice President J.D. Vance going back to visit his Meemaw. That is the Vice President of the United States telling his Meemaw she has a pretty mouth, which seems kind of strange for our racist Vice President to tell his Meemaw. What else do I have? I've been working, I'm proposing something. I don't know if this is going to, I have a meeting with the White House. Since there's so much money being spent on ICE detention facilities, I thought, what if we build a state-of-the-art Fred Trump Memorial Detention Center? Wouldn't that be nice? You know, this would be the toilet. You wait to use the golden toilet, just something, and then you would have Friday night. You would watch the rats fornicate. This would be one of the. I'm pitching this to Stephen Miller later today. Before I go, that's artificial intelligence. As many of you know, in the laundry room of my apartment, I've set up a little CRISPR. I do some genetic engineering, and I make my own cruelty-free, lab-grown chicken. I'm a vegan. I don't want to hurt any living thing. This tastes just like chicken. This is about a week into the gestation period, And let me show you this. And I feed them, and it's delicious. Let me show you. It's feeding time with my lab-grown chickens. Watch what happens. And they're delicious. Lab-grown, so there's no cruelty. I have grown attached, however, to one, and I'm keeping her. Her name is Susie. I kept Susie. This is a lab-grown chicken. I love her because she's sick all the time. I feel very... That would be artificial intelligence. What do I have here? Billy Long lasted 2 months as our IRS commissioner. He didn't last to Billy, did he? Billy Long, 2 months as IRS commissioner, and more like Billy Wide. I can't believe Billy Long was fired as our IRS commissioner, especially since he makes his own custard. Look at this. Why would you fire a man who makes his own custard? I'm David Feldman, reminding you to stay strong and protect the weak. I have more, but all right, I'll show more tomorrow. Please like this episode so I remain in your feed. Please share it. Thank you to Bob and Mila in the chat room. Leave a comment. I read all your comments. Stay angry. Stay angry. No violence. Don't break the law. Stay angry and push back. Push back. These are fascists. Push back. I'll see you tomorrow.